Welcome back to another segment of the GT185 Adventurer. And so we're going to get right into it because you know I don't like to hear people who do these videos just talk endlessly about what they had last night for dinner. So when we left off, we had just finished the seat. And we're going to line the tank. Now, the reason I'm going to line this tank is not because it's leaking. And I'll go through this so that you know why I'm doing it. I am noticing a little bit of bubbling here and there. And I have not had good luck when I check out the tank, fill it with some gas, see if it leaks, even let it sit overnight, and then paint the tank without lining it. And I've had two tanks that actually started leaking. So I just don't like to take any chances. It's not the end of the world to line the tank. And I have always used the Caswell epoxy. It's a two-part epoxy, and so I'm going to get right into it. But because I have had a detailed video on this on plenty of my other motorcycles, like the blue Honda CB750 Super Sport, that literally had holes so big underneath, right in here, right along in here, and along in here. The tank looked beautiful, but I filled it with gas and it was literally like a screen door. It was even worse than that. It was like a screen you would use for screening out gravel or sand. So I taped with blue tape along the bottom to fill the holes, and I lined it, and it came out awesome. And you could actually, through all the holes, you could see the fuel in there. You could see it if you kind of rocked the tank. You could see the fuel going up and down because there were so many holes. You could actually see the line of fuel. It was amazing. So this stuff is very amazing, and let's get right into it. And I'm going to go very, very quickly with this because I've done this video so many times on other bikes. So let's get started. Okay, lacquer thinner. Pour in about, I don't know, enough so it sloshes around. I'm going to pour in what I got left in here. You want to make sure you got your petcock on and that it's at least sealing somewhat, because this isn't going to be in there for very long. Handful of drywall screws. Cap. Shape. Now you're going to do this, I'm going to cut the video, but you're going to do this, you know, for 10, 15, 20 minutes, however bad your tank is. This one is not bad inside. So I'm not breaking up a bunch of scale and rust. But if your tank's really, really bad, just shake it longer. Turn it on reserve and drain as much as you can out. And it's a little rusty looking, but not too bad. Now, don't even worry about that. We're gonna rinse it out yet again with another, cup or two of lacquer thinner. Okay, so it's all drained out. Now you can see inside. I got it tilted And you can see all the screws down in there. So we're just going to take a magnet and we're going to that's one. There's like 5 or 6. So you keep doing this until you got them all. Now that all of them are out of there, I like to take some needle nose pliers and right down, you know, where you're picking up all those screws is where all the sediment wants to go, and get all that rust out of there. See all that rust in there before we rinse. I'm running low on lacquer thinner, so I'm gonna just run it through a coffee filter and put it back in for a rinse. And then I've got some clear, clean stuff I'm gonna do for the final. All right, so here's the second rinse. And have it, you're gonna have to go on reserve because there's only just a little in there. So you're probably saying, why don't you just pour it out the top of the filler neck? Well, you can't, because there's a splash guard in there, and you can get, if it's full tank, you can get 3/4 or, you know, even almost all of the gas out by doing that. But the last little bit, which is what we're draining out here, won't come out. I found another gallon of lacquer thinner. So we're going to give this our kind of final. And you know, you don't need to stress too much about this. This is kind of like hand grenades and horseshoes. The internet sure loves to make everything way more complicated than it is. We're just trying to get it clean of oil and debris that might keep the epoxy from sticking. But I can tell you that epoxy sticks to almost, it'll stick to everything. It's going to get all over the place if you let it. So don't stress over it. Just get it as clean as you can. We're going to line it, be good as gold. Final shake. Let it get everywhere because the cap's leaking. Yeah. And then let's drain it off. I'm going to drain it off into this. It's got all the old ugly lacquer thinner in it. Look at that, it's really actually clear. So I'm happy with that. But even if it wasn't clear, it was still a little rusty. Maybe I'd do one more flush, but like I said, don't get too anal about this. This is hand grenades and horseshoes. And that's old Shingletown talk. Now what I'm going to do is take the pitcock off so I can really drain it. Now let's see how much comes out of here and how fast. Kind of getting it all. It's tough. Still wants to kind of slosh around a little bit. And I guarantee you there's, you know, probably a 1/4 cup still in there. So I look down inside and there's not that much lacquer thinner left in there, but I am gonna see if I can soak it all up there, just aid in the drying, because you do need to get it dry. But the lacquer thinner itself, it's really, you know, it's got to dry within an hour. With the cap off and the pitcock off, it's probably not going to take much more than maybe an hour on its own, but we'll help it along with the heat gun. So I've got it set really low, like I'm not exactly sure where it is, but you can just feel it. It's just warm. And we'll just let it sit here and blow in there for 5-10 minutes. That's all it's going to take. So it's been in there for about, I'd say 5 minutes. I'm sure it's dry. All right, so it's been at least 10 minutes, maybe even 15. So we're good to go there. Time to clean all this up. So you're probably not shooting a video, so take tons of pictures. I point out where the stripes are. You can see on this, the stripe actually goes over this mounting bracket for the emblem. And over here, the factory didn't even cut it off. It's just put right over the top. And these stickers are most likely just right on top of the clear. We're going to cover it with clear. Cover the pitcock with a little blue tape. Nothing more is needed. Some tanks have like crossovers, little tubes coming out. Could be venting. What you want to do with that is you could fill it with Play-Doh or fill it with plumber's putty so that that tube itself doesn't get filled with epoxy. Just play with it, and then you have to clear it out before the epoxy sets up, and then just make sure you watch it and make sure that you're poking through as the epoxy sets. And you might even have to set the tank at a specific angle so that it doesn't fill into the holes, that sort of thing. Just think it through, but it's no big. So we're going to start mixing. So one thing I would do is that I have some paper towels handy. Get the lids off. Get a mixing. Look at that. Look at that advertising for Reno Brake. They are the best. They did a lot of my paint that I can't get the specific. I go to them. They help me out. Get some gloves on. And one other thing, when I worked at the bike shops, they would have these 10-gallon, or maybe they're 15-gallon cans that grease comes in, and they'd use them as garbage cans, and they'd also line them. They'd take an old motorcycle tube and run it over the edge here and zip tie it, and you could use it as a tire mounting station. But for us, this is where all of the excess glue is going to go, right into the can. Now, I tape around the filler hole so that if any glue gets on there, I can take the tape off and hopefully all of it will come with it. And then you've got a little bit of saran wrap and a couple of rubber bands. And once the glue's in there, we're going to put the saran wrap over this and rubber band it down. Okay, so it's time to mix. Put the part A, part B, let all that get in there. And now, they say you can put up to an ounce of xylene or lacquer thinner into this mix and thin it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to splash a little lacquer thinner on it there so that it may be a little thinner, cover a little better. So we're going to do this for 2 minutes. We're going to be mixing all this up for 2 minutes. All right, 2 minutes. is up. Try and get the stick out of here without getting it on everything. And immediately we pour it into the tank. And this is a motorcycle kit size of the Coswell. This is a small tank, so this is gonna have so much excess you won't believe it. But that's okay, because it's really not that expensive. I think it's about 45 bucks. And so we've got it in there. Put the cellophane on here, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. That should be good. Now we're going to rock it. So you just want to rock. Get every inch of it in there. It's hard to tell what you're doing, but there is a lot in there, so you're not gonna be without goo. And keep in mind that most of the leaks will happen on the bottom of the tank. And because it has that filler neck overflow or splash guard, you almost can't get the glue to come down onto your stuff, even if you wanted to. It just drips. So I like to get the top of the tank, get it good coated, and just keep rocking it till you get the whole thing coated. One thing that's helpful is to look inside and watch. You can see, I'm not going to be able to show you, but you can see the fluid and the epoxy moving, and you can see that it's moving kind of like, I don't know, it's a lot thinner than you would think. So you really are rocking at about this pace, and it's flowing back and forth. So once you kind of got the idea of the viscosity, you can figure out how fast you have to rock it. And then there's a center piece that the backbone of the tank is here that lifts up right below here. And so if you get it all on one side, let's get it all over on this side. If you get it all over on that side and then just flip it over, it'll roll all over that hump. So just keep working it. You got 15-20 minutes to do it. Just keep working it. All right, I feel like I've got it all moved around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tape off of the petcock area. This is why you want to have paper towels around. And wipe off any excess. Just not going to matter because we're taking it right away to the garbage can. All right, so let's turn it down. Get this out of the way. Let it all flow. I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm letting it flow all off of here, and all come down to the bottom corner, and then you can see it come out. And you see it's still pretty thin. And I noticed there was like, I just saw it go through, kind of like almost a piece of plastic or something. It was strange. Or a piece of the glue that had already set up. So I got a lot of it out here. You can see it's just still dripping. See, you can see that clear. Look, watch, that's going to come out of there. I have no idea what that is. I've not seen that before. But I definitely want to get that out of there. And I will do that. And you can just set the tank right on there. Let it flow. I'm going to grab that plastic. Look at that. I don't know what that is. So there we go. Let it continue to drain. And then I'm going to roll it again. I'm going to roll it down to the corner, because you don't need it very thick. It can be very, very thin and still be very, very strong. And the more you can get out, the less you're going to have on the bottom of the tank, because inevitably you're going to lay it flat and it's all going to kind of sludge down to the bottom. And the more you can get out now, the nicer the job you're going to have. So that's why I don't wait too long to start draining it. It's been 10 or 15 minutes and it's still oozing out. So I continue to lift it up, turn it so everything's going towards the rear top, and let it all settle in there. It's still flowing out of here. And slowly roll it over towards the pitcock hole and let it drain out. I pretty much think I've got it. So I'll continue to do this though, and we'll take it from the draining part and go on into how we're going to tap the epoxy and the hole for the petcock. Now that I've got as much of it, I think, as I'm going to get out, I'm going to lean it away from the petcock hole. The reason I'm doing that is I don't want the petcock to be the heaviest area. I don't want it to have the most epoxy. And so in order to do that, I'm going to have to lean it away in such a way that it will start to open up the holes here. So, I don't know if you can see, but there's a few drops, a little bit of, so take some lacquer thinner and wipe it off. It's easier than sanding it later. Just get that off. And you know you don't have to worry too much about the bottom of the tank, but I do. Just do a good job. Get this all cleaned up. And the tank is lined now. And of course, all of the epoxy is settling on this side, which I don't want either, but I'm going to clean up this hole. And then I'm going to wait for the epoxy to start to set up a little bit. And then I'll roll it back onto to another position. Probably just prop up the back. Anyhow, just use your brain. Get your epoxy covered inside. That's all you're trying to do. This has sat overnight. Everything's all set up. Hard as nails. And let's see if you can get a view inside there of how shiny it is. And it is shiny. You can see the air bubbles from the liner, but it is shiny, silky smooth, and sealed. And I don't hope I'm not taking too much time on this. I wanted it to go quick, because you can look at my other videos to see how the tank sealing goes. But there is a little bit of epoxy here, and it's nice and smooth, but I just want to sand it down to make sure that the gasket's going to seal. And then what I'm going to do is tape this area off, because we're moving on to the body. Now we're getting ready to do the prepping and the wet sanding. The first thing we got to do is get these stripes off. So what I use are these sorts of things. It doesn't have to be 3M, it can be anything. I don't even know what this was. But these little wheels that go on to this little air polisher. It's called a polishing wheel right here, polishing this. But they're pretty much a Scotch-Brite. They're pretty tough. And I'm just going to take that off. So, you can see here, don't be afraid to get down to metal, because we're going to build it all back up. But that'll take it off fairly quick. Otherwise, trying to block sand that off, it just doesn't work. There you go. So it does a really good job. It gets it glue and all, just gets everything. And because the top was so rusted, I'm just taking the same little 3M wheel with the air grinder, and I'm just going to take all this surface rust off, and then we'll build it back up and paint it. Well, the decals are off, and because I did use the grinder, the little air grinder, this is going to be easy to build back up. These are low spots now. High spots are a lot harder to deal with. This came off pretty good. I've just got a little bit of area here that I'm going to probably have to fill. That, it may save time to fill that and then wet sand it down. The high build primer will eventually take that off, but I probably have to do about 3 coats, which is what I'm going to end up doing anyway. I always end up doing 3 coats of the high build because I get every little thing out of it. So, some really good news. This all came down. All of this was all rusted out. All surface rust. And the stripes are off. But I thought that I was seeing bubbling in the tank. But it really is just the welded areas. Everywhere I hit, it's shiny metal. So really, this tank is really in great shape. May not have needed to be lined, but every time I kind of look at everything and go, oh, I don't need to line it, it leaks. they're just so old, you know. It's great insurance. So I'm going to put a coat of self-etching primer on this next. So I've just got some self-etching primers and just some cheap stuff here. I've got some better stuff, but most of this is coming off. Probably going to do more than one coat. But we just want to get a real light coat over the exposed metal. Almost translucent, you know, you're seeing through it. So we get that, we'll let that dry, and then we'll probably just go ahead and hit it with the high build primer. So it calls for 24 hours before you can top coat it, but I can see that it's still tacky. I've got it out in the sun. It's 100 degrees today. So I got a feeling this thing's going to dry a little sooner than 24 hours, but I'm going to give it overnight. I'm going to help it along. And I can already see that this is just going to be fantastic. I'm not going to have to do hardly anything. Most of the time I've got all sorts of issues to deal with. So I've got plenty of time to move on to other things. So I've got to clear the workbench. So I'll put all this stuff aside, but I thought I'd show you. I've got this. It's kind of a glazing putty, just for small little imperfections. And with a tank, you know, just a little scratch or a pinhole, you got to fix it because it's going to be right in your face. And then I've got the little blocks. I like this. This is a double textured. One's a little, the gray is a little easier. It's a less dense foam. It kind of conforms to more of the tank. And then the back side is a little stiffer. And then this is just hard as a rock. And I've got another one of these. I like them so well. And then just a little pail of water to do the wet sanding. But we're going to move on to something else. The parts manager needs to go outside. Now, I don't know what that's for. Oh, now he's embarrassed. So what we did is we went ahead and shifted gears, and I cleaned up the rear view mirrors because they are Suzuki. Got them both on. And I'm going to start with the petcock, and it's got to come completely apart. And I'm going to dip it, and I'm only going to dip it for maybe 4 or 5 hours, not overnight or a couple days like I do with carburetors. Because I just want to clean it up. It's actually, you know, I could just hand clean it because the interior is pretty clean. You can see. And then I'm going to have to rebuild the little screens because they are not available. Now another thing that happened is I ordered this part, that part number right there. They sent me these washers. They are not rubberized washers, and that's what goes on to the screws. So I'm going to probably have to utilize these, or I'm going to check my box. I think I've got some new rubberized washers. They may be Suzuki, and that may just offend somebody. But I can't, you know, restore motorcycles with the risk of being offended. So I'm going to throw it all into the parts clean. All right, I've got the petcock in the chem dip, the Berryman's. And it's time to move on to the tachometer cable. So it comes in here and it flows down underneath to this point where it's coming in between the fork and the front frame steering neck. And then, because I've got pictures, lots of them, I'm able to put it back exactly where it was. And there's an indentation in this wiring harness here that shows right where it goes. Right there. This runs right along the top, comes down behind this, you pick it up here, and it's kind of tucked back in here and straight in. And I might have to reroute some of these a little bit when I put the airbox on, but I think I've got it pretty close. So at this point, we may be able to work on this oil pump, but I don't have the injector oil, and I want to use the Yamalube injector oil, so I'm going to have to probably go get that, because I want to use this bleeding screw here to bleed the line coming from the oil tank, and just make sure there's no air in the line. I can break it, bleed it here. I think this is a bleed screw. Went through this once before, where you remove this plug on the carburetor and you index both cables so that when there's a line in here, and I'll show how that works. So I purchased the Super M Maxima just because I couldn't easily get the Yamalube. It comes in a huge, like I think a gallon that I'll never use. So this is reported to be very good two-stroke injector. So I filled the tank just to where the sight glass is showing a little bubble. I just did this because if I have any leaks, I don't want to have a full tank that I'm going to have to drain out. And right in here is your drain or your banjo fitting, and this is the hose coming from the tank. So I'm going to crack that loose and let it flow. And so what happened was, the first amount of oil that came out was the old blue or greenish oil that I was running before. Then finally the kind of reddish color oil came out. So that indicates that the line all the way down to the oil pump is full of oil. I cleaned up the cover. I put the cable back onto the oil arm here, and I got all these brand new plated screws that are going on. So I'm going to have that on, and then I'm going to do the adjustment again. Even though I've done it, I'm going to do it again. This is the adjustment hole, and that's in the first video. It shows how to do that, so I'm not going to go back through it. So I'll get that hooked up and adjust. This is all dry now. I actually let this sit a couple of days, and that's just because I had other stuff going on. I would have done it the next day. So anyway, it's been wet sanded with 400 grit. I'm not trying to really get anything out of it, you know, any imperfections or anything. I'm just trying to get it smooth enough where when I prime it, I'm going to be putting enough primer on there so I'm not digging into metal high spots if I can help it. And then these have been sanded, and I cleaned the backside, and I'm getting a couple of different readings here. I'm seeing that there's a factory spray or overspray of the gold, and then I also see a factory overspray of silver. And then on the tops up here, you can see there's definitely a silver base coat. So that doesn't necessarily mean that my paint, which is House of Colors, is going to have a silver base coat. But I'm going to have to figure that out. So next step is to get these things in primer. But there is a couple of support items here, and one is never start a sanding job without an ice chest. Okay, that's just ridiculous. I mean, I know that over there in Shingletown, they just kind of put them in their armpits, you know, and they think that that's cold enough. Just put a couple in your armpits, or maybe a little ice in your jacket pocket and throw a few of these in there. But, you know, here in the big city, we actually have an ice chest. So that's one support item. And then the other support item is you just need some chocolate chips now and then. So enough of that. I did pull this out of the chem dep, and I did do some repair. I was lucky because the sealer, the epoxy sealer I put in the tank, I know is fuel resistant. So I thought I could repair this, and I don't know if you remember, this screen was detached from this round circle. So what I did is I rummaged through the garbage, and I got the 2 cans of epoxy that I use for the tank sealer, the Coswell. And then I took a little bit and I just reattached it with the Coswell. Kind of reattached it. It took a couple of tries, and then I had to blow out the hole. But, you know, that's good enough for me. I'm going to have an inline filter. So the inline filter will do what these are doing in case this doesn't work. But you just kind of have to work with what you have with these bikes, because there's no breakdown on the parts schematic showing these screens. And I looked through all my screens. I do have a few screens, and none of them were the right size. So this is all pretty nice, clean. I've got all of the pieces, and I've either replated them or they're new. So I've got the rubber. I'm going to reassemble that, and that just goes back together in a reverse order. But it does have this little screen, which I again could not buy. So this I'm going to clean up a little and then reinstall. So off to primer on the tank. Okay, I usually use this Nason primer, which I really like. It builds up nice. It kind of goes on fairly smooth. But I left this cap cracked a little bit, and there wasn't a whole lot left in the bottom. There's, you know, maybe an inch left in the bottom of that. And so this just hardened up. So what I'm going to use is what I've used before, the Summit urethane primer, which is, to me, it's just as good in a lot of ways. The only thing I don't like about it is it's a little lumpy on the way it goes on. So you're sanding a lot of lumps off. But in a pinch, I'm going to use it up. And there's another Summit 2K urethane primer that I saw a body guy use, and it actually is self-etching, and he really likes it. So I'm going to try that next. So I've already put on one coat, and you can notice I'm not putting it on the sides. The sides don't need anything. It's just where the other stickers and emblems were. You can kind of see it in the shadow of the top one there. I'm going to need to do some filling, and this isn't going to take it out, this heavy build primer. And then there's the tank. So what I thought I would do is just show you how light and how thick this primer from Summit goes on.
pretty lumpy. And it may be the way my gun's set up, but it doesn't matter, it's just primer as long as I get it on there. But I do like the Mason better. I just like the way the Mason goes on better. Let's see if I can get the camera set up here. Spray a little bit of the tank for you. And I'm putting it on as not as heavy as I think I should. And there again, I'm only going where the stripes were. I've already got this covered. And this will all be blocking. And probably 1 or 2 more coats of primer. And here it is after the probably 4 coats. Put it on as thick as I could. And I might be able to sand that all out. But I know this one I won't be able to. You can see the imperfections in there. So now, we've got to do the guide coat. So I'm going to try and do this. Just a little light coat. Just to give it a somewhat coverage. I don't know what this is, whether it's just a flat black that they charge me a lot for, SEM Guide Coat Black, or whether it's actually something that is special. But can you see the lumpiness? Alright, so the guide coat is on. Now it's just let it dry. I'm going to let it dry overnight and then start to block it and see where we're at.
Okay, so we're back up in the sanding area. I've got the hard block. It's really, it doesn't move much at all. And 400. So what you do, you just start blocking it. And as you get down a little, you can start seeing the high and low spots. So I'm going to sand this a little. And I'll wipe it off and I'll show you. Why you do this guide coat. you can see right here these little low spots, and they'll go away. There's enough primer on here where you can take the block and block it, and you do it till all the black is gone. All you have is gray. So other than bore you to death with the sanding, I'll show you this part here, and then I'll come back when I've got probably all this sanded out, but also I'm going to do the whole top, and then I'll start the sides, and that's really where we were trying to build up, because all those stripes, we had to take it down to metal, and so there's paint still here, metal here, and then still paint up here. So especially down here, I can almost still see a line where the stripe went and where we had to grind all the paint off. So that's going to be a low spot. So I'll show you that. So this will really show you. You see that area we ground it all down to metal. You can see this is high because that sandpaper and blocks hitting this up here where that paint is, and it's hitting up here. That's just a classic example of why you do the trace coat, the guide coat on there. So I'm going to continue to sand and block in different angles, up and down, sideways angles, until I get either where this is into metal, which it probably won't be. We might get into some paint, but that's okay. Or I start showing metal down here, but I don't think so. These low spots mean that this is built up paint and this is bare metal, so I'm gonna have that, probably be able to sand that all the way out without having to do any putty or any spot putty or anything. So let's see what happens. All right, you can see that's just total gray there. I thought it would be good to show you what I did to get there. So I'm going to do this spot right here. So we'll angle that way, kind of work on the so-called black stripe, that striping there. And I'm not going to really touch this corner or these corners. I'm going to do a little on this corner with the hard block. I'll use the rounded block because these flat panels here, it really looks nice if you can just get it perfect, you know. You can get it if you blocked out without having to use the curved block, then it's really going to show well. But these curves here, these body lines, that curved one will get in there. I can run up along there with it. It's much easier to get this nice and flat, but using this hard block really gets these high and low areas to match up. And it doesn't take long to get that. And see, you can see here, I'm probably too hard on this corner. It's already gray. It's done, right? There's a little gray here. Maybe take a little, but see, this hard block will also hit these hot spots. This is coming out really, really good. So I'm going to stop when I start to see these little areas pop up of the green primer. And now we just got to get this whole panel, get all the black off it to where it's all just smooth gray. You can see there's a little spot here. I'm going to get that out because all that stuff can show up. Till you just see nothing but gray, no little white speckle, no nothing. And then she's ready to paint. So you can see, I'm getting it down, you can see a little bit of black speckles. And that's what the guide coat does, is it tells you where to focus your sanding. And it also, more importantly, tells you where you're done sanding, where you don't need to sand anymore. And run the risk of cutting through to the metal, having to reprime. Not that we're not going to reprime, I'm sure we're going to have to. But if we can get 99% of this just totally gray and flat without having to reprime, it just saves so much time. So like these spots here and this spot here, look at all that. Let's see how that looks. There it is. Just a few little speckles right there, and that's done. So that should give you an idea of how you're getting the basic blocking. Just kind of go in different directions. I can see here I'm starting to get into something, and so that's enough. That's where the guide coat tells you now I need to stop. There's no reason to go any more on this. So I wanted to show you this. You see these little lines, kind of a line there and a line here, a line there, this line. I was talking with a parts manager that I worked with back in 1980, 84, 85, something like that. And he reminded me that the quality of the striping and the quality of the paint on these Hondas and Suzukis were not all that great. He said a lot of times they'd have to order a new tank sometimes if a customer really didn't like what they ended up with. You know, if they ordered something, it came in, they pulled it out of the crate, they set it up. They said that, he said, you know, these waves in here, that when I'm done and when you're done doing this, you're probably going to have a better than factory finish. So the other thing is, with the guide coat, you can really see a dent or a deep scratch. So the question is there enough primer and enough paint on this to get that out? So let's just see. Block it going this way. Block it going that way. Keep blocking. Yep, there's enough. That was a pretty deep scratch. But I know I loaded it up pretty good, so. But that guide coat will show you that, and that little thing in there, that little scratch, if you just painted it gray and sanded it by hand, you might not have caught that, and that's right in your eye, especially on the kickstand side. You know, you'd have seen that no problem. And let me show you something. I came real close to going through into the metal right there. So what I'm going to do, and there was a lot more on here. It looked more like this. What I'm doing here is I'm not using the block anymore. I'm just going to do this by hand till I get all the guide coat off of here. And that'll be a lot safer than trying to continue with the hard block. But you can see I'm going to be able to get all those black spots out of there and not touch that area that had the problem with me just watching TV and not watching the sanding. So there you go. There it is. That's all sanded. It's all flat, perfect. And so now always keep a couple of pieces of the 400 that you've kind of used up to do delicate spots. But so this is the hard as nails. I mean, it's the Durablock, you know, and it barely moves. So you can see I'm going to go along this line here using this block and at least get it 90% there. You can see the line right here. That's where there's probably a little paint left where I ground off the top to metal, and then I ground this area to metal, and there's a little bit of paint left. So we're just gonna kind of go down the side a little, just try and get it started. You know, if you don't have stripes on the existing tank or a bunch of things you have to work around, you know, you don't need to take it to metal, that sort of thing. It sure makes it easier, but we'll get this. By blocking all the areas you can with the stiff block, you're going to get it really, really flat. And then you can keep going till you kind of get a little warning sign, maybe like this, that you're running out of primer. And it's pretty, it's so flat already that if you have to do the rest by hand without the block, it's not even going to show. But this gets the majority of the tank in this area. See how I'm kind of going through there? So now I know that's it. I mean, I don't want to go any deeper than that. Still got a few little white or black dots over here. We'll get those. Just keep going till they either go away, which there's a few in here. They either go away or you hit the warning spots. And from there you can just do it by hand. And I'm liking it. Oh, got a warning spot. But you pretty much have got it. And it took me going almost to a warning spot there to get all the little black spots out. And that's okay, as long as we don't go down to that metal. So I've got, I don't know if you remember, there was a couple of spots like this that are deeper, so I kept going with the block, just little strokes, and I believe I've got them all off except for a couple little black spots that I'm going to just do by hand. This isn't going to affect anything, but it's going to allow me to kind of hone in on just those little areas that need just a little bit more. And that's it.
Now I'm going to work on down here, and I took some of that off. I can still see a line, but I'm going to continue with the block on this because it's really a good place to sand with the block. I'm not going to, see, it's almost out of there. That line right there is almost gone. You see, it's pretty close. You can go a different direction. There it is. So around the filler neck, got it as close as I could with the block, and so then you just take a kind of a worn out piece of sandpaper, or one that's nice and flexible, and then just your finger get in there, get all that guide coat off, and you know you're going to be flat. And the thing about areas like this are when you've got like there's a little groove here. So if you don't get all the guide coat off of here, paint tends to beat up in here, which will completely cover any roughness that might be there from not taking the guide coat completely off. You won't see a thing, plus the gas cap goes over the top, but I like it all to look good when you take the cap off or whatever. I don't like it to be just kind of good enough and covered. Got all the way around, and now I'm going to continue back with the block on all this. Okay, what I've got this whole side done with a little bleed through onto the metal with that. Now the emblem is going to go across it, so I might just get lucky there, but I think I can cover that anyway. Then I've taken this down here, the whole top, around the filler neck. I've edged this down here and edged it up here. But what I wanted to show you was that's kind of a deep dent right there. And by really piling on the primer, I should be able to get that out. I'm hoping I can. And I'll take and do the whole rest of this side. You see this deep? See that? That's a deep pit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the real soft block and I'm going to just use like a corner make sure that I'm not grinding just on the top of it. Now see, I'm coming through there. So now I'm going to go over on this side. Oh, I'm coming through there. I'm almost there though. I think I got it. Just real careful. And there it is. It is gone. Now this, let's see what happens with that. I'm going to use the hard block because I want to take it down flat, and then if I have to do a little bit of spotting, sanding it a little bit in that bottom there, I'm going to, but I'm going to try to get it out first as much as I can using the block, because what I'm doing here is just taking down the primer around that dent. And by doing that, I'm going to keep it flat
because I could basically just sand with my hand, just get in there like that and get it gray. But then you're going to see an indentation in the paint in the right light. I mean, most people wouldn't even care. They'll just do that, and you probably won't see it unless you just hit it right. But you know what? Let's see. So are we coming through? See, we're coming through on either side here. So I've gotten most of it. See if I can get in there. And that, I don't want to go any deeper there. Let's see if I can get a little in there. Boy, I'm so close. That last little bit, I'm going to do by hand, because I might not have to reprime this tank. And this probably will not show as an indentation or a dent. Go around it too. There's still a couple little pieces of black in there. Let's see if I can just, I'm not really going too hard on it. There it is. There it is. Yeah, I don't feel a thing. And you won't see a thing. So that, so far, that's the worst. I'm done with the tank, and there's no need for another coat of primer. And the reason I say that is these areas that I've kind of gotten through the primer, I looked at it closely, and this is the base coat of the original paint job. So there is one area somewhere that actually has metal. This is not. This is the silver base coat, which on top of that, I'm going to put a silver base coat most likely on this. I haven't opened up the can yet, but if I've got a silver base coat, it's going to match this silver paint, or the metal anyway. There's a little metal coming through here. That's no big deal. It's on the bottom. And just a hair right there. That's the only place, and there's enough primer that it's just going to go. So this is an excellent, excellent wet sand, and it is going to come out flat and shiny. So now all that's left to do is work on these. They're going to probably take a little filling. They're going to need some filling and another coat of primer, which is not a problem. Everything's all sanded. The tank is ready for paint, and the side covers are also ready for paint. I had enough on to take everything out. Any waves or anything that's in there. Even though they're behind the decals, it's still just not the way I like to do it. It's got to be nice. I always like looking at them shiny and pretty, and just try to get it so flat and the clear on there so even that I don't have to do any color sanding. Most paint jobs, if not all, are a base coat, clear coat these days, and they just lay it on. And if it's got runs or, you know, a lot of orange peel and fuzz in it, it doesn't matter, because you just color sand it out and it looks like $1,000,000. So I've always got that option if I can't, or if something happens. You never know, something may happen in the booth. So from here we go to paint. Well, it's time to start mixing the paint. So what I basically have here is House of Color base coat. It's called the Shimmering, or BC. And what I do is I try to highlight the areas that really matter, you know, like the mixing ratio, you know, the application 2 to 3 coats, and then how long to let it dry between coats. So I've got that for the base, and then I've got the mid coat, and they've got them, VMR has them labeled, so you know what you've got here. And the mid coat takes a catalyst on top of a reducer. The base coat, just a reducer. And this is my mixing station with a piece of granite that I had left over from a house I did. And you always want to use a filter on your paint before you put it in the gun. And then, right before we spray, I wipe it down with a really clean t-shirt. They just happen to have less lint, with Grow Super Clean, HET. And finally, wipe it down with a tack cloth. This is with the first coat of base. And I'm letting this dry as the instructions say. Let it dry for 5 to 15 minutes. And I'm going to go I'm going almost 15 minutes, even though it may be dry sooner, just because I want to make sure it's not going to hurt to have this overly dry in between these coats. I want to make sure I don't get any, lifting or any weird things going on, any runs. So I'm going to take the full time between coats, and we're going to do 2 to 3 medium wet coats. Here's the third coat. And I wanted to show you that the third coat covers all the different coloring that you might have from, sanding through the primer into some darker color. There was a lot of that dark area here and around the edges where you sand through the primer, the old paint, right down to the black plastic. So 3 coats is more than enough. 2 thicker coats would have probably done it. But I'm doing this to show you how much paint you really need, because that's a huge question. And I'm going to show you what's left in the can after doing 3 fairly good coats on all of the parts here, which is just 2 side covers and a tank. And so to verify, it's a quart of the Gamma Gold and Pagan Gold. So that's the Gamma Gold, which is the base coat. And as you can see, that's about, I'd say more like a quarter of a quart, maybe a third. So and that's how much is left in the cup. So if you were ordering paint, so far the base coat, you could order half a quart and it would be plenty. Of course, it would be half a quart of the paint, and when you add the reducer, you're going to get a little bit more. It's 2 to 1. So basically they sent me 2 quarts of paint and 1 quart of reducer, which I'm going to take half this reducer and put it in the other paint, half of it goes in this. But don't mix it up. Don't mix it all up, because I've got enough here to do 2 more GT185s or equivalents. Here's the first coat of the mid coat, the candy coat. And as you can see, it's starting to get away from a copper color to more of that tangerine color that we all know and love. Well, this is a first for me, a paint job that totally blew up. Just totally blew up on me. At first glance, it looks nice and shiny. But there was something in the spray gun. So all I can say is what I believe happened was that I got some buildup around the tip of the base coat. And then when I went to spray the mid coat, I didn't clean the gun, which I've done a million times. and it spit out pieces all over. So I thought a lot of things through as I was, thinking about this last night after it all blew up on me. But these little pieces, they sand right out. And it says you can sand, after you wait 12 hours, you can sand the mid coat before you put on your clear. And I can see that is possible, because if you look at that could be painted and cleared. And they said if you go too deep, then you start to get different coloring, where the lower coat is lighter and you're getting down into the second or third coat. This was the third coat. So what I learned also is, after looking at the pictures of the bike online and what I remember of the color, this is more of the color than this. This is too dark, and I don't think you can really see it. I can see it here. Let's see if I can get it. But when you look, I'm going to show you on the... You see how that's kind of that's the lighter color. It's got the color in it. Along here you can see on the curves and on the edges, it gets to be that deep color. But when you're looking straight at it, that's a whole different color. And I know that this was an awesome match. So what I've done is I sanded down in here, down to the very first coat of mid coat. Here's the base coat color. It's almost a copper. And then this. So basically what I've learned is I'm going to go back and do another base coat and cover it, get it covered. I may even put a silver base coat on underneath. I might just go silver over all of it. Silver base coat. Then the copper base coat over the silver, which might get this a little lighter. And then I'm only going to put one coat of mid coat on it. And I believe I'm going to come out with this color instead of that deep color. And that's what we're looking for right there. And that's the color I saw when I saw the chip. So that is the plan. And so here we are back to square one. Everything's nice, smooth, sanded with 400, ready for the final wipe down, and start again. I'll tell you what, if you're not doing paint jobs every day, there's just no way you're gonna not have issues sometimes. So even the amount of bikes I do, which is not that great amount, I still have to go over everything, read all the data sheets, kind of like you're doing it from the first time. So if you're doing it for the first time or the second or third, you're not alone. You just gotta do everything like it says in the data sheet. And sometimes even then, like on this job where it got too dark, it's trial and error. So we will see what we can do about getting these pieces to the right color. So I've got a quart of this House of Color Orion Silver. It's very silver. And I use it as a base. So I'm going to put this on first to try and lighten it a bit. Now this is 2 coats over the silver. And I like this a lot better. It's a lot lighter, I think, than the 3 coats with no silver underneath. So let's spray the mid coat on. We're only going to put 1 coat on, or maybe 2. This is the color. When you look at it,
I think in the video it's showing up more tangerine. It's actually got a yellow hue to it. Kind of a gold. But this is the color right here. But this is one coat of clear. I'm going to put on probably 2 more coats. Then we'll stripe it and we'll clear it with probably 2 more coats.
All right, there it is with, I believe that's 4 coats. 4 coats of clear. And it's still very tacky. Now we're going to put the stripes on top of that tank, and then we're going to do the 2 coats of clear over the top of the stripes. So what that does is it allows me, if I want, to scuff these and recoat with the 2 coats as I'm doing the tank. So that's just an option. But typically, this is the way I like it, just really, really shimmery, shiny, and no sanding, no color sanding. I would be happy with this paint job just the way it is. But to do the stripes, we're going to scuff it. So it's actually going to look deeper, and it's going to have more clear and more depth to it. And then I could even color sand on top of that if I wanted. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to sand this, you know, with 1100, 1200 grit, something like that, just to get it, just to scuff it and just to take the sheen off, so the next coats of clear will adhere to it. Then we're going to have to clean it so that the decals stick. So we're going to do the scuffing first, and then the decals, and then we're going to recoat with 2 or 3 coats of clear, and it'll look identical to this, only it'll have all of the decals on everything. I thought I'd show you the stripe kits. So there is the stripe kit for the tank, and then here is all of the different stickers that would go on underneath the seat and that sort of thing. I've got 2 of these. I've got an original Suzuki. You know, you're looking this stuff up and I just buy. I mean, it's not that expensive. I think this was like $8 or something like that. And here's 10 Suzuki, you know, OEM stuff. 10 of the motorcycle company sticker. And then these are badges that go on these beautiful side covers. So I'm going to arrange the stickers and take a shot of. So I test fitted the stripe, and it's gonna be nice, and it's wide. Some of them have numerous small little stripes and a wider stripe, and those can be really troublesome. No, that's going to go on there perfectly. And there's the layout of all the stuff that goes on the side covers. Are those side covers going to look new? Oh, they're just going to look beautiful. I've got them all scuffed. Got kind of a powdery haze. Scuffed them with 400, so the clear has something to bite onto when we paint over the decals. So let's put the decal. You know, most of the videos you don't see the problems, you just see the outcome. And what I did was I scuffed these up after I had cleared them the first time, and then I realized that I've got some see-through decals, so if they're scuffed up, I'm gonna not have a shiny background. So another couple of coats of clear, and then we'll apply the decals, and then we'll just give it a light scuff so that we can, you know, have the overcoats, the clear that's going to go over the decals. They'll have something to bite onto. You know, I'm not going to scuff the decals. I'm just going to scuff the paint. So let this dry overnight, and then try to apply the decals again. Let's recap what has happened so far on the paint job. So the first issue, and paint jobs always have issues. I don't know any of them that have gone just perfectly. It's just not the way it goes. And perfectly means you just have to deal with a few things here and there instead of a lot of things. So we had put the paint on the base coat. The base coat was probably not dark enough, and on top of that we put mid coats on, a lot of mid coats. It called for like 3 medium wet and then 2 wet, and just 1 coat of mid coat brought us to the color. 2 coats got it too dark, and so that was our first problem. So we had to scuff it down and reshoot, and I added the silver base coat on top, or below everything. Below everything was a silver shimmering base coat, then the base coat, then just 1 mid coat of candy, and then we went to 2 or 3 coats of clear. And then the next issue was I scuffed the whole tank and all the side covers down in order to put on the stickers and decals, and that became an issue because these are see-through, and all I would be seeing is nice shimmery top coat, but underneath you're going to see a sanded, scuffed, dry gold paint job. So back to the booth, and here's where we're at now. And it doesn't hurt to put on layer after layer of clear, in my opinion. It just gets deeper and more lustrous, I guess you would call it. So now that we've got this back to a shiny state, we're going to install our decals. So I'm going to start with the side covers first, because I take a lot of pictures. I happen to have a picture of the placement of the decals, but what else I wanted to show you is look at the match in the color. Now the top, if you look up here, over here on the top of this old side cover, you can see the original color in there. Look at that. Look at that match. I mean, I gotta say, this is a absolute dead nuts match. And obviously it's lighter where it gets sun faded, and it gets lighter when you look straight at it, which is exactly, look at those. And you can see around the edges here of the old cover where the color was, and there's the color now. It's real happy with that, and I'm gonna have leftover paint, so I'm probably gonna sell the paint to someone on eBay, probably with maybe instructions on how to get this color, because you just won't find it. This took hours and hours and hours to match. But so we have the layout for the stick, and now the CCI is on. There it is. The GT185, the Suzuki, and the CCI. Looking good, ready for clear. All right, I wanted to show you this. I got this off of eBay. What it is, they're not showing you really what it is, but it's the Suzuki, the white label here. Instead of buying 2, I found these on eBay. I found 10. Do I ever need 10? I never think so, but I just order them anyway. And of course, I'm going to need it with this project, because when I first started out on these, I wasted one on the sanded base when I had sanded these for clear, and then thought I could put the decals on top. So that's just something to keep in mind if you ever are on the fence post of whether you're going to order 1, or you have the opportunity to order 2, or if they're cheap, order 10. You'll never get hurt. So here's my package of 10. I'm going to pull out the third one. And I still have some left. And I could even re-list those on eBay and probably get, double my money. Also, a couple of things I wanted to point out. These GT185 emblems were reproductions out of Indonesia or Thailand or somewhere off of eBay. They're really, really high quality, so I didn't want to go without mentioning that, only because to find them OEM is very difficult. Plus the adhesive is going to be old, and the fading of the colors might be there. So I really like these. They went on very well. They're just the right thickness. They're not wiggly, but they're not super stiff, and they just conform perfectly. So I want to say these are really, I'm impressed. That's how it's supposed to go. How I do that is I lay it on here, then I tape a section of it. It could be the top, it could be the bottom. And then once these are held in place, then I pull the backing paper off of one stretch here, and then I pull the backing off, and then I just start applying it from one edge to the next. And so now it's about half on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull this tape, lift this up, and then continue down this line till I get to here. So now in theory, lift this up, pull the backing. All right, I finally got a piece of it here. Okay, pull the backing. Of course, you be very careful. And in theory, it should just go right on. It should just line up because everything else is lined up. And just start working it down. Try not to let any of it hit early. And you could line this up a little. And there we are. Press it down good. Sure it's all on there and it's all adhered. There are no bubbles or weird things, although I've had plenty of paint jobs that have had so much difficulty that I've had to pull it on and off 2 or 3 times, and when you do, you run the risk of some of it stretching and just not lining up right. But this should do. This should be perfect. So let's go ahead and perfect. Really nice. I was afraid there was a crease here. I was afraid I was going to see that in the tape, but it's not there. It's right in here somewhere. It was more inside the paper, this tacky paper on top. Remember, we're going to scuff this, not the decals, but we're going to scuff the paint, the clear, and then re-clear over these decals. And there we are. And there was a crease right in here. I just smooth that out. Anything that you can see is, the nicer the better, right? And there it is. Put that badge on here, and boy, that's going to look nice. Now let's do the other side. So here's the other. So what I did is I pulled this back and I tore the paper off, the backing paper, and now I'm just going to start rolling it on. Because this is lined up and taped down, it should just form right in place. It should just go right where it's supposed to go. Famous last words, right? I'm going to keep this stretched out. Make sure it looks like it's going where it's supposed to. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. There we are. And just pull this up. This clear is still a little tacky. And do that. Lift it up. Grab the paper. So, take it back very carefully. Now, here is a area where there's the creases that I noticed on the other side from shipping. So I don't think they're an issue, because they flattened right out. Just start adhering it. And then you lay this out. And it pretty much wants to just go one way. You know, it's rigid, so it's not like pinstripe tape that you can make it wiggly. It's not. It's just going to go right where it wants to go. And I'm going to kind of get that stripe down pretty good. Pull it off. Very carefully, as to not lift up the stripe and cause a bubble. You don't want any bubbles. Now, I've heard of people putting it on with soapy water, but you know, I've had bubbles that way too, and I don't know, this just seems to work just fine. Any sort of little lift on the edges goes off. Every corner down, and there she is, ready for clear. Okay, so I am wet sanding with 800, and I'm doing it by hand. A lot of people will use the little block or the foam, the kind of the wiggly foam, but because I don't want to run the risk of getting onto these stripes with my sandpaper, I'm not going to do that. And it's coming out flat. I mean, there is going to be no orange peel going in. You know, I mean, you're going to get a little bit when you're spraying, but going in, it's going to be flat. And this is going to be a deep clear because I think we're up to like 7 coats right now. And we're going to put on 2 or 3 more. This is interesting because the clear, sanding the clear, makes, it's almost like a guide coat in itself. I don't know if you can see these little shiny dots here. Those are low spots. And I'm going to do a little bit, get a little bit of sanding, you know, right on the spot there and see if I can get them out without going too deep. You know, if you burn through the clear, you're toast. You're just toast because it's over. But 800 is not too aggressive, and a couple of the spots will come out. Some of them won't, but it is kind of interesting that it's basically a guide coat. See, I got the one out. I mean, that's practically out. This one here, this one, this one, this one. Anyhow, all these are nothing. I mean, if you don't get them out, you don't get them out. I wouldn't even grind on them if you don't have enough experience. So, we've sanded. You can see it's all flat as a board. You can see a couple of areas where I just haven't gotten to them, but you can see, you can get right up to the stripe without going on the stripe and get it all super flat. So it takes that final glossy flow coat and just makes it shine. Here it is. It's all super flat. I mean, that is flat. I got every bit of orange peel out. And I still took the sandpaper, the 800, and I ran it across this really lightly so that the clear will stick to it. I'm not sure if I needed to. I've seen videos where they said you don't need to do it on the stripes, but look at that. Now, if there's orange peel in it, it's just very minor, or you won't even see it because all of the bottom coats, all the orange peel's out. So all I've got to do now is the side covers, and then we'll start spraying the final clear. This is all the items. Base coat mixed with reducer. Mid coat mixed with reducer and catalyst. And this is the silver base coat mixed with reducer. So you went silver base coat first, then the gamma gold. Gamma gold. These are all house colors. Then you go the mid coat, which is pagan gold. And once all that's done, and you only want, on the mid coat, you only want 1 coat. I can't stress that more. 1 coat, maybe 2. It just depends. Depends on how bright your silver is. And that'll get you the color. And then you just clear over all that. And then here's the color. And again, it's coming in a little more tangerine than it is here. There's a lot more yellow to this in the normal light. As you can see, I didn't get really any orange peel. Here's the side covers. It's only been about 10 minutes since these were sprayed, so I'm really excited. I can't wait for these to harden tomorrow, because it'll be time to start really finishing this up. I'm going to let this sit probably another day, and meanwhile I have started to work on the airbox. And look at those nice Suzuki, look at that S on top. Oh yeah, beautiful, original, nice, all on here. It's really some of the final steps happening right now. So the airbox is on, and I'm going to do the inside. Now I'm waiting for the air cleaner element to dry. It's a foam air cleaner element, so I use the Maxima and the PJ1, just any sort of foam air cleaner, and then the oil. But the other thing I wanted to show you was, remember I had this and the grip was just, you know, sun checked and just deteriorated from the sun. And I got really lucky and found a brand new one. Look at that. Brand new. It's really gonna make the whole control area shine. And I also am putting on the fuel hose, and I've got some OEM little clips, and there's some fuel tank, band, side cover clips, and we're getting down to just the kind of the double duplicates that I've ordered. We're really getting close here. Now I did rebuild this pitcock, completely rebuilt inside, and then I modified these pickups here. I think I showed you how I glued one together and so forth, and then, you know, you forget what you've ordered, and for some reason somewhere I got these two brand new screens, so there you go, brand new, beautiful. And now let's get the tank on and the air cleaner. Now the air cleaner is completely on, and the foam is in great condition and it's all oiled up and ready to go. And the next thing is you need to use some 3M. It's super weather strip, and you put it a little on the hole here that goes on the shaft for the fuel tank mount. The reason I put that on is it's flexible enough so that you can take it back off later, but it's stiff enough that it won't come off with the tank. And you know, they tend to, these old bikes, you tend to pull the tank off and these just roll on the floor because they've kind of dried up a little bit, but a little bit of weather strip on there holds them up tight and nice. And now I'm going to put a little bit of grease, just a little lubrication on this so the tank slides in there really nice and beautiful. Okay, let's test fit the tank. Right over the little wheels. And there it is. Nice, very nice. Normally, what I've done before is just take the tank, tip it upside down, and mount the petcock. But because this paint is still a little fresh, and I gotta say this is probably the best paint job I've ever done. I mean, it just doesn't have any orange peel in it. It doesn't, it's just beautiful. I'm gonna pat myself on the back a little bit. And then if you color sanded it, it would be like ceramic. It'd be like glass. But I tend to try and get them so perfect on the original spray that there's no need for color sanding. And you lose a little bit of gloss when you start buffing. And then you get the swirl marks. which you can't avoid. You know, I mean, I can see them in every paint job. A motorcycle is about the only thing you could paint like this. There's no way you'd get a car like this. There's just no way. The time it takes to get from one side of the car to the other, and just the overspray from painting the rear of the car, whatever's landing on the top, you know, it just kind of, you know, precludes you from being able to do this with a car, but you can certainly do it with a motorcycle, and it looks beautiful. So I'm going to pull the tape off of here. I'm going to mount the petcock. I've already got some hose here. I'm going to put an inline filter and button it up, and then we'll put the emblems on. All right, the petcock is on. Fuel line, there's a little filter. Got the tank on, fuel cap. Got the side cover on. Starting to look like a motorcycle. We really don't have a whole lot left to do. I'm going to do the emblem here. And I think at this point we'll just fill it with... Okay, I've done a lot of emblems. And as you can see, it bubbles up on the second coat. So this is not the correct paint. I'm not going to use this paint. I'm going to start over. But also, there was a little bit of black. You can see it right in the U. You can see the line where the old black paint, I didn't take it off. So, you know, start all over, make it perfect. So I got all the old paint off of this one. And we're going to do the background in black now. Okay, so I like this a lot better. This is the black that I just put on. And this is the black I put on before. So, you know, this probably is as good as anything, but in fact, I let it set up. I sprayed it. You spray it into a little tray. This has got lacquer thinner on it, but basically you just spray the can, spray black paint, take a paintbrush and just dab it in. And as you can see, you're going to have you're going to have places where the paintbrush got onto the chrome. So I'm going to show you how you get that off. Just get a little piece of paper towel and fold it into a nice tight little line. And as you can see right here, there's an area there that needs to be cleaned off. So you just, the lacquer thinner, run it with your fingernail and the towel. And look at that line. Beautiful line there. And do that. Got the S. And there it is. I'll get in here and I'll do these. And then this one's done. Looking good. Ready to go on the tank. Here is OEM clips. And there's 4 of them here. I think I got these off of eBay because I don't know if I could find them through Partzilla or Rocky Mountain. So now they go on the back. And then I think I'm going to pop them into the tank first though. Alright, so the holes have gotten a little built up with primer and paint and clear coat. 16 fucking, oh, excuse my language, 16 coats or whatever. I don't know. It's not 16 coats of clear, but there's at least 6. So, just take a utility knife and just kind of ream out all of that extra paint, primer, because those clips will not go in. And if they go in, then they're going to be too tight on the plastic pins. So, And if I lose this knife and I put a big gouge in my tank, it'll be on film. So Joe in Shingletown can just rib me forever for operating without a net. And then you just take the little clip, pop it in the hole. Sounds easy. There it is. Now let's see if that Suzuki emblem will just go right in. Let's see. Huh. That one seems to be going in, but this one doesn't want to. There we go, there's that, there we go. There it is. The Suzuki emblem. And the bike is so close to finished. Oh, I can't wait. Fire it up. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. You know, the shop is getting a little empty. I got rid of the KZ650. I want to say get rid of it, but I sold it. And I'm down to finish projects to basically my cafe racer, which it's just hard to sell that bike. And I really don't want to sell bikes, but I need the room. And when I get done with the GT185, I think I'm going to have just enough room to properly display all the bikes. Before I had like 6, and it was just like a row of bikes. They were cool. Everything was nice, but you couldn't, you kind of got lost in them. So now I'm going to be able to really display these where you can really look at them and look at the detail. So let's get the other emblem on. All right, both sides are on. Suzuki emblem. And really, it's almost time to take it out and do the final walk around and to end the video, the series here. She's really looking good. Now I had a couple of issues that I'm taking it out and starting it for the first time. So what I did is I cleaned up the points. It made a big difference. And I actually had to take this carburetor apart and clean it. For some reason, the right-hand cylinders started just backfiring and not getting gas. So I did that, and it took a little while. But that's the way it goes when you pull them all apart. You know, it's, you know, to put them all back together, you need to ride it, which I just don't ride these bikes. You know, I restore them, and so I'll give it a little test ride. But whoever ends up with this bike should take it for a couple of rides, come back, check some nuts and bolts. You know, just, you don't want anything falling off. Not that it's going to, but you never know. I mean, there's a lot going on here when you pull it all apart. So with that said, the last thing to do is the Kickstarter. Now I've polished everything, it's all looking pretty, and we, you know, replated. And look at that beautiful Suzuki brand new plated bolt. So that's going to take a little grease, put it on, and then we'll do our final walk around and startup. I had the Kickstarter on, and this shows through. I just can't live with that. We've got to get that to shine on the end there. Probably has the bolt that covers it, but I don't care. Well, another detail-driven restoration is complete. And doesn't she look pretty? She is really, really beautiful. It's hard to tell in the video too. You just look everywhere, every little piece of detail that just comes out at you. All the plated bolts, all the chrome. Probably the best paint job I've done, and it's a tri-coat candy. And then, you know, the luck of, you look at the grips, everything is Suzuki, and I was so lucky to find this throttle grip, Suzuki, completely rebuilt master, all kinds of stuff. It's hard to remember everything that was done. All the new chrome here, the Suzuki mirrors, the seat cover with the chrome trim, all the new spokes, polished wheels, polished fork legs, new fork seals, chrome horn. The list goes on. New tires, brand new. The blinkers, new, at least in the front, I think. And all of the decals. You know, it's really hard to find all this stuff. You know, people ask me all the time, and I do what I can to help them. But these stripes are just to die for. And to find the seat with the Suzuki on the back, that's tough to do. You know, it's just so clean. New sprockets, new chain. Now this chain is on there on the tight side because they stretch out almost immediately. I might end up loosening it up a little once I take it for a little ride. And this really needs to be wiped down. It has been sitting while I was waiting for the paint to cure. Look at that seat. Isn't that just beautiful? It came out so nice. Everything on this just so beautiful and nice. This has to be one of the nicest 185s out there. So that is the end of this video. And those people in Shingletown, this is too nice for Shingletown. You can't, I just couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it. Oh my God, it would be sacrilegious to send this to Shingletown. So Joe, I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm not even gonna consider this one to Shingletown. So if you find one, then we can talk about restoring it, but this one's too sweet. So anyway, I will see you on the next video, and it should be, we're gonna do some three-wheelers, some Honda three-wheelers that we've been waiting for. So until next time, thanks for